My First Summer in the Sierra by John Muir. August the 3rd. Had a wonderful day. Found Professor Butler as the compass needle finds the pole. So last evening's telepathy, transcendental revelation, or whatever else it may be called, was true. For, strange to say, he had just entered the valley by way of the Counterville Trail and was coming up the valley past El Captain when his presence struck me. Had he then looked toward the North Dome with a good glass when it first came in sight, he might have seen me jump up from my work and run toward him. This seems the one well-defined marvel of my life, of the kind called supernatural. For, absorbed in glad nature, spirit rappings, second sight, ghost stories, etc., have never interested me since boyhood, seeming comparatively useless and infinitely less wonderful than nature's open, harmonious, songful, sunny, everyday beauty. This morning, when I thought of having to appear among tourists at a hotel, I was troubled because I had no suitable clothes, and at best am desperately bashful and shy. I was determined to go, however, to see my old friend after 2 years among strangers. Got on a clean pair of overalls, a cashmere shirt, and a sort of jacket, the best my camp wardrobe afforded. Tied my notebook on my belt, and strolled away on my strange journey, followed by Carlo. I made my way through the gap discovered last evening, which proved to be Indian Canyon. There was no trail in it, and the rocks and the brush were so rough that Carlo frequently called me back to help him down precipitous places. Emerging from the canyon shadows, I found a man making hay on one of the meadows and asked him whether Professor Butler was in the valley. "I don't know," he replied, "but you can easily find out at the hotel. There are but few visitors in the valley just now. A small party came in yesterday afternoon, and I heard someone called Professor Butler or Battlefield or some name like that." In front of the gloomy hotel, I found a tourist party adjusting their fishing tackle. They all stared at me in silent wonderment, as if I had been seen dropping down through the trees from the clouds, mostly, I suppose, on account of my strange garb. Inquiring for the office, I was told it was locked, and that the landlord was away, but I might find the landlady, Mrs. Hutchings, in the parlor. I entered in a sad state of embarrassment, and after I had waited in the big empty room and knocked at several doors, the landlady at length appeared, and in reply to my question said she rather thought Professor Butler was in the valley, but to make sure he would bring the register from the office. Among the names of the last arrivals, I soon discovered the professor's familiar handwriting, at the sight of which bashfulness vanished, and having learned that his party had gone up the valley, probably to the Vernal and Nevada Falls, I pushed on in glad pursuit, my heart now sure of its prey. In less than an hour, I reached the head of the Nevada Canyon at the Vernal Fall, and just outside of Spray discovered a distinguished-looking gentleman who, like everybody else I have seen today, regarded me curiously as I approached. When I made bold to inquire if he knew where Professor Butler was, he seemed yet more curious to know what could possibly have happened that required a messenger for the professor, and instead of answering my question, he asked with military sharpness, "Who wants him?" "I want him," I replied with equal sharpness. "Why? Do you know him?" "Yes," I said. "Do you know him?" Astonished that anyone in the mountains could possibly know Professor Butler, and find him as soon as he had reached the valley, he came down to meet the strange mountaineer on equal terms, and courteously replied, "Yes, I know Professor Butler very well. I am General Alvord, and we were fellow students in Rutland, Vermont, long ago when we were both young." "But where is he now?" I persisted, cutting short his story. "He has gone beyond the falls with a companion to try to climb that big rock, the top of which you see from here." His guide now volunteered the information that it was the Liberty Cap Professor Butler and his companion had gone to climb, and that if I waited at the head of the fall, I should be sure to find them on their way down. I therefore climbed the ladders alongside the vernal fall and was pushing forward, determined to go to the top of Liberty Cap Rock in my hurry rather than wait, if I should not meet my friend sooner. So heart-hungry at times may one be to see a friend in the flesh, however happily full and carefree one's life may be. I had gone but a short distance, however, above the brow of the vernal fall when I caught sight of him in the brush and rocks, half erect, groping his way, his sleeves rolled up, vest open, hat in his hand, evidently very hot and tired. When he saw me coming, he sat down on a boulder to wipe the perspiration from his brow and neck, and taking me for one of the valley guides, he inquired the way to the 4 ladders. I pointed out the path marked with little piles of stones, on seeing which he called his companion, saying that the way was found. But he did not yet recognize me. Then I stood directly in front of him, looked him in the face, and held out my hand. He thought I was offering to assist him in rising. "Never mind," he said. Then I said, "Professor Butler, don't you know me?" "I think not," he replied. But catching my eye, suddenly recognition followed, and astonishment that I should have found him just when he was lost in the brush and did not know that I was within hundreds of miles of him. "John Muir! John Muir! Where have you come from?" Then I told him the story of my feeling his presence when he entered the valley last evening, when he was 4 or 5 miles distant, as I sat sketching on the North Dome. This, of course, only made him wonder the more. Below the foot of the vernal fall, the guide was waiting with his saddle horse, and I walked along the trail, chatting all the way back to the hotel, talking of school days, friends in Madison, of the students, how each had prospered, etc., ever and anon gazing at the stupendous rocks about us, now growing indistinct in the gloaming, and again quoting from the poets, a rare ramble. It was late ere we reached the hotel, and General Alvord was waiting the professor's arrival for dinner. When I was introduced, he seemed yet more astonished than the professor at my descent from cloudland and going straight to my friend without knowing in any ordinary way that he was even in California. They had come on direct from East, had not yet visited any of their friends in the state, and considered themselves undiscoverable. As we sat at dinner, the general leaned back in his chair and looking down the table, thus introduced me to the dozen guests or so, including the staring fisherman mentioned above. This man, came down out of these huge, trackless mountains, to find his friend Professor Butler here, the very day he arrived. And how did he know he was here? He just felt him, he says. This is the queerest case of Scotch far-sightedness I ever heard of, etc., etc. While my friend quoted Shakespeare, more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamed of in your philosophy. As the sun, ere he has risen, sometimes paints his image in the firmament, even so the shadows of events precede the events, and in today already walks tomorrow. Had a long conversation after dinner over medicine days. The professor wants me to promise to go with him sometime on a camping trip in the Hawaiian Islands, while I try to get him to go back with me to camp in the High Sierra. But he says, not now. He must not leave the general, and I was surprised to learn they are to leave the valley tomorrow or next day. I'm glad I'm not great enough to be missed in the busy world.